You're going to love this. Trust me, what you're seeing now is my normal state.
Welcome, I'm Spaghetti King, and today, or tonight rather, because it's night right now, I will be talking about Naruto. Naruto! Okay, so I'm going to be talking about the Fourth Great Ninja War. The Fourth Great Ninja War, specifically the flashbacks in the Fourth Great Ninja War. Now, if you are, I guess, a Naruto fan or a Naruto junkie or whatever you want to call them, a lot of these people will be aware that the Fourth Ninja War has kind of a bad reputation among the Naruto people, rightfully so. And some people will defend it, more casual people will defend it, nonetheless. I think it's probably widely agreed at this point by most that the Fourth Great Ninja War is a very problematic arc in Naruto. Now, I'm not here to address people who are going to come in and defend it and say, oh, well, you know, I think it was good, whatever. I'm not here to talk about the arc itself, because if I were, I could go on for like 5 hours or whatever about all the problems that were in that arc. And believe me, I've been ranting about this since I was but a wee lad, a little baby boy, with my, little early boy review energy. I was raving about the Fourth Ninja War of Naruto back then, because I used to be quite the Naruto autistic boy. So, again, I'm not here to rant about the Fourth Ninja War itself, but rather I'm here to talk about the flashbacks within the Fourth Ninja War, because oftentimes what I will find is the Fourth Ninja War is usually considered bad, but people think that it has some diamonds in the rough. And these diamonds in the rough are the flashbacks. So the flashbacks are good. The lore of the Fourth Ninja War was good. But the plot itself, the plot was problematic. But the lore, no. I'm sorry, but no. And here is why. So in order to do this, we will have to begin with how the lore dumps progressed and were elaborated to us, starting with the Kage Summit and then going to the Fourth Ninja War itself, because the Five Kage Summit, while it can be considered its own arc, also is sort of its own setup arc for the Fourth Ninja War. So the first real backstory that we get in the Five Kage Summit comes from when Tobi has his little conversation with Naruto, where he's like, Naruto Uzumaki, it's time we meet, blah blah blah. So you have this whole blah 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 conversation, and in here he reveals for the first time the sons of the Sage of Six Paths, Ashura and Indra, and I believe he drops their names here. I believe he does. Correct me if I'm wrong, but I believe he does drop their names here. But he definitely mentions the Sage's sons, and he mentions the whole idea of the Indra, the older son, developed his... He was a prodigy, and he developed his powers of the eyes, and he originally developed the Sharingan, which he got as basically an inheritance from the Sage of Six Paths Rinnegan, of course, and this is where later Orochimaru and Kabuto got the theory that the Sharingan is a lower stage of the Rinnegan. Basically, the Rinnegan and the Sharingan are part of the same dojutsu ability, because if the Sage's son got the Rinnegan as a descendant, then the original form, or highest form, would be the Rinnegan from the Sharingan. So, that kind of idea. Now, later on, Kishimoto would go on to say that you need Senju DNA, and Uchiha DNA to get the Rinnegan. However, the confusing thing, of course, is that Kishimoto, we originally thought it was just Senju DNA. That's what we used to meme about. Oh, Senju DNA, it's like gold. Oh, Senju DNA, it's so great. But it turns out it's not Senju DNA, it's Hashirama cells specifically. Specifically cells of Hashirama Senju. And this ties into the idea of the fact that Hashirama is Ashura's reincarnate, which makes me wonder, are Naruto cells also like crack cocaine or whatever we used to say back in the day? I mean, not like I've ever taken drugs or whatever. I don't really know anything about drugs, but people used to meme about that, right? I don't know. We've never really gotten an example of Naruto cells being particularly useful in the series as far as I know, so I don't really understand it. I really prefer it when it was Senju DNA, but again, I'm not here to say what I prefer would be, because I'm not here to talk about, like, retconning or remaking the Fourth Ninja War, because even though you couldn't do that, you can go on that for hours and hours and hours about, improving and whatever the Fourth Ninja War, because there's a lot of problems in place that you would want to improve. This backstory right here, when it was introduced, I kind of didn't like it, again, because for me, I liked the idea of the Rinnegan being separate from the Sharingan, especially because the Rinnegan had very different powers than the Sharingan. The Rinnegan has the 6 paths, which of course are based off the 6 samsaric realms of reincarnation in Buddhism, and that is just very different from everything that the Sharingan, for the most part, everything that the Sharingan did. In fact, when we look at how Pain used the Rinnegan, the only abilities which I can see that he used, which were even comparable to the Sharingan, is the fact that he was able to see the chakra. He was able to see chakra that Tsunade, they basically knew about Pain's ability to redirect, basically to push them away and pull them, so they had chakra in their feet, so they would not be, they would be able to keep their footing, basically. And Pain was able to see this with his Rinnegan. So, other than the fact that you can see chakra, which the Sharingan can do as well, and granted, seeing chakra is pretty much an ability of all the dojutsu. Like, the Byakugan can see chakra, chakra points. Can the Byakugan see chakra? Whatever. The point is, Sharingan can see chakra as colors in a detailed sense. Byakugan can see within people, and as far as I know, it can see chakra. Because the Byakugan itself, with the Gentle Fist, can penetrate chakra, so I'm pretty sure the Byakugan can see chakra. I mean, it would be kind of weird if they could only see into the body, but they couldn't see chakra. But the Rinnegan can see chakra as well. We don't know at that time if the Rinnegan saw chakra as detailed as the Sharingan does. We don't know if it's exactly the same, because that's really the only example we have of that, is that Pain could identify that. But still, these abilities are completely unique. Like, the 6 Paths abilities was like, oh, you can rip people's souls out, and you can turn yourself into a machine that has laser beams and missiles, and you can steal people's chakra from them, and you can, redirect, basically, you can redirect or pull in gravitational forces towards yourself, and etc., all these unique, weird Rinnegan abilities, and these abilities have nothing in common with the Sharingan at all. So, again, I personally think this whole introduction of the Suns, it's fine if it were just lore, but keep in mind that this is the benchmark which establishes the idea of the Rinnegan being a higher form of the Sharingan, which for me downgraded the Rinnegan. I think it made the Rinnegan worse. Moreover, this is, of course, the introduction of the reincarnates. Well, not the literal introduction to us to the concept, but these are the reincarnates who would be Hashirama and Naruto on Ashura's side, and Madara and Sasuke on Indra's side. And of course, the reincarnation concept was another aspect which, for me, soured and was one of the last nails in the tinker for just trashing the plot, really, of Naruto for me. Once this whole reincarnation business came in, I just thought it was absolute nonsense. And again, I will go into that further, but this video isn't really about criticizing the whole reincarnate Naruto Destiny angle. There are other videos about that that you can watch. I mean, I think that argument's been established, but yeah, this is the introduction of this. And at the time, again, I'm giving my criticism of this specifically, but at the time, it's just lore. It's not really too problematic. So the next flashback we have is the Minato flashback, which you get when Naruto meets Kushina. We get this flashback where you see Naruto being born, and you see how Tobi infiltrated the Leaf and was able to kind of kidnap Naruto after he was born because he was aware that the Nine-Tailed Seal would be at its weakest during childbirth, etc., etc. And then you have Minato having his fight with Tobi, and Tobi gets away, and the Minato sacrifices himself to stop the Nine-Tails, etc., etc. Now, I think we all liked this flashback. I don't know anyone who did not like this flashback. It gave us a broader context to the introduction of Naruto, because even though we were aware of that introduction, because of course it is the first thing you see when you go into Naruto, it's this panel of like Naruto as a baby with the Reaper Death Seal, trigram seal on his belly there. I mean, that's the first thing you see. I mean, it's one of the premier images of Naruto, really. We didn't really know about that. Like, we really hadn't had context on it. Specifically, other than the fact that I believe, Itachi had mentioned that Tobi was behind the Nine-Tailed Fox attack. I do believe he did. Yeah, he did, actually. He mentioned that. And then I think Jiraiya... I'm not sure if Jiraiya mentioned it directly, but there was a very interesting conversation between Jiraiya and that one, like, scroll frog. I don't remember his name. The frog that has the contract seal for Naruto's seal. Jiraiya has a very interesting conversation with him where he drops several things, including, very subtly, the fact that Minato is actually Naruto's father. That is actually an early drop of that line, if you never noticed it before the whole Minato tells it to Naruto. So that was actually just directly said in the manga before, if you were paying attention. But nonetheless, I think we all like this flashback. I mean, it's a great scene. This scene right here, where you have Tobi literally, like, holding a baby Naruto in his hands. I mean, like that, for me, I think for all of us, it made Tobi, it added to his mystique, made him more imposing, made him more worthy as a final boss opponent, because he's literally gone back to the very foundations of Naruto for us, right? I mean, the Akatsuki weren't really that relevant until Shippuden, and Tobi was not introduced until Shippuden, so bringing him back really to the foundations of Naruto at this point, I think, made him a more respectable villain. Now keep in mind, I am saying Tobi because this is before that reveal. Understand, there was a time before that reveal, and at that time we had very different interpretations of Tobi. We didn't know who he was, so we had very broad interpretations of him back then, as opposed to the reality that we know he is now. I am not a fan. Many of us are also not fans, but some of you are. But nonetheless, this flashback, I really have nothing negative to say about it. I mean, we got to see Naruto's mother, Naruto's father, get a broader characterization for them. Minato at this point had been a very not very explored character. I mean, we got that point where Naruto met him after the pain fight, which really was probably the first prolonged conversation with him really in the series up to that point. I think there was some OVA or something where, like, Jiraiya shows Minato the Rasengan or something. I haven't seen that in, like, a long time. I probably haven't seen that in, like, a decade. But I think a lot of the veterans will know what I'm talking about. But there was that, and I think he showed up in, like, the fourth Shippuden movie. I think it was the fourth one. Again, minor stuff. Like, he was a relatively unknown character by that point. Kakashi Gaiden and stuff like that. But this was really the first time we got to see Minato at home chilling, and, see him, get his child for like a day, and he was the Hokage, and this and that. We saw it, and it was a great perspective into it. Gave great perspective from the series in a broad sense, and I mean, really answered a lot of questions we kind of have been asking since the beginning of the series. And one more tidbit about that I will mention. Of course, I don't like to bring up things without, you know, knowing them firmly, because I heard this like a couple years ago, so I'm just going to say this. I'm not going to be like, hey, yo, confirmed. I'm just going to say, like, I heard this a couple years ago. I did hear that Kishimoto's wife is actually the reason why. I think this was in like a manga thing. Like, I think like someone asked Kishimoto in the manga and he gave a response to this, but I could not tell you when. Again, this was a couple years ago. I heard this just in my mind. But basically what happened is that Kishimoto planned for this Minato flashback to be relatively short. He planned it to be maybe like 2 chapters or something, which, I mean, who knows what that would have been like, because, I mean, it would have been quite different from what we got. But basically his wife, I guess, scolded him for that, because she thought that this was a very important thing, because this is Naruto's parents, so she kind of had an impact on Kishimoto, bringing more depth to this. And it was around this time where Kishimoto had his children, so he wanted to make this arc more in depth to kind of give a more parental element to it. And of course, the fourth Ninja War later would have Minato return, and it would go on, and you would have more of that parental thing going on in Naruto, which of course a lot of people loved, because a lot of you are just Minato diehards. I mean, let's be frank about it. I am not a Minato diehard, but a lot of you just, I don't know. You people are in love with this guy. But frankly, so that was kind of an input from Kishimoto's wife on the kind of direction that, you know, the series took in this regard, and I just find that very interesting and kind of funny, really, that went the way it did. Now, again, really nothing bad to say about this flashback here. I think this really was one of the last good moments in Naruto, to be frank. I think this is probably the last moment where I can say Naruto was 100% good, with no sugarcoating, no you know, damage control, no hidden biases, no nothing like that. This is probably the last time I can say Naruto is, for me, 100% good, and I really have no problems, relatively, other than, you know, nitpicks, but you're always going to have some problems, right? But yeah, like, this is where we get into Fourth Ninja War territory. This is where it goes down. This is where the series becomes, like, unfixable, simply put. And, I mean, there were points where it could have gotten better, but it just went down, and down, and down, and down, and it never went back up. And some of you will disagree, but again, we're going to go into this. So this is about the flashbacks. Let's keep this in mind. So the next bit of flashback information that I recall is when, well, Five Kage Summit, Tobi explains the Ten Tails to the Kage, and explains that the Sage of Six Paths was real, and declares war on the Five Great Nations, basically. So at this time, the Sage of Six Paths was semi-mythical. However, Tobi basically confirms his existence now. I mean, I was mixed on this at that time because I preferred him being mythical. Personally, for me, the less we ever knew about the Sage of Six Paths, the better. The more mythical he was, the better, if you ask me. So every little bit of all these things that were revealed, in my opinion, were bad. I didn't really like them. I didn't really want to know more about the Sage of Six Paths, personally. I thought the mystique was good enough on its own. I think that's a good enough, interesting enough idea where something is very fantastical, where it could have been real, but it also could have been fake. I mean, that is why, you know, when you look at more medieval or ancient interpretations of religion, there's a very interesting idea there, because there were simply things about the world which were not known and could not be explained other than by fantastical or religious occurrences. And same thing in Naruto, right? I mean, it's the same deep explanation. But yes, we get the confirmation of the Ten Tails, and personally, when I first heard this, like, when I was like 11 or 12 or whatever, reading Naruto and whatnot, I was like, look, I thought the Ten Tails was stupid, simply put. I thought it was just dumb. I heard this and I'm like, are you kidding me? Mainly because, again, we've never heard of the Ten Tails before. We never heard of the Ten Tails before this. It's just suddenly dropped that you can just combine all the Biju. I mean, we didn't necessarily know the true nature of the Biju before. But, you know, suddenly we just get this new explanation of how these things work. And personally, I just wasn't a fan. I personally am not a fan of the Ten Tails. I don't think it really should have existed in the plot too much, but at least it shouldn't have been called the Ten Tails. I think calling it the Ten Tails was kind of stupid, but I think it's okay connecting it to the ghetto statue and all of this, you know, as it goes, but I think it was a bit problematic. But keep in mind, for the most part, all that I'm talking about right now is nitpicks. So I didn't personally like the Ten Tails, but I'm not going to say that that's like a plot problem. I personally wasn't really a fan of the whole Ashura and Indra, Sage Six Pass Sun thing. More explanation on the Sage Six Pass again. So as of right now, this is all personal. Okay. So, the next detail is the explanation of how the Sage Six Paths basically, with the Ten Tails sealed within him. This is in the Konan and Tobi fight. With the Ten Tails sealed within him, he splits it using Yin Yang Release, the Creation of All Things technique, into 9 separate entities, which become the Tailed Beasts, which he gives personalities and lives of their own, and goes into semi-paralysis for a period of time before he recovers, and etc. Of course, Obito later on will also go through semi-paralysis, and after Madara is restored, after Kaguya is sealed, Madara dies for some reason, even though he had the exact same process happen to him. Oh, all the Biju are removed from him. Well, Obito and the Sage Six Paths can survive, but not Madara, so, you know. But we're not about that. We're not about the plot. We're not about the plot being flawed. We're about the flashbacks being flawed. And again, this is just explanation. I don't have a problem with the whole creation of all things. I mean, Sage Six Paths is hyped up to be godly and all of this, so whatever. Now we get into the fourth Ninja War. I can finally get moving. So Madara comes in. That is Edo Tensei Madara. He explains that he planned for Nagato, of course, to revive him using the Outer Path, using Rinne Tensei. Now, of course, there are problems with this, revolving with Obito. Namely the fact that all the stuff that happens with Nagato happens in the second Great Ninja War. Whereas Obito died in the third Great Ninja War. So, this is where the timeline starts to kind of collapse, namely the fact that this is the whole problem with the context of Tobi being Obito, which occurred back then, namely the fact that, number one, it was under Yagura's rule, it would have been, yeah, that the Blood Mist became known under that moniker. We see Kisame in the Blood Mist at that time, and Yagura, as far as we can tell, throughout his entire tenure, was manipulated by Obito. Moreover, Obito, like 1 year after he died, apparently, was able to fight on par with Minato. Moreover, he looks like a grown man. I mean, seriously, when you saw Tobi in the flashback, does he look like a 14-year-old boy? I mean, does he look like he is younger than Shippuden Naruto? Does he look like that? No, he looks like a 20-year-old man. At least. He looks like Tobi. He looks like an adult. So, when I see that Tobi, no. Moreover, Kakashi, same thing. He looks like 16, 17, something like that at that point. Like, Kakashi looks younger than Tobi at that time. Like, they don't look comparable in age. So it's just really weird. And simply put, the feats in combat, which Obito shows to be capable of, no. I mean, there are, of course, theories that, oh, he was actually controlled by Madara, so Madara was using his body. You know, these were all theories back in the day, but within the manga itself, it just doesn't make sense. Within a year, no one becomes, like, that powerful within a year. It's just, no. Moreover, again with the Nagato thing. Now, I do not know when the third Great Ninja War happened after the second Great Ninja War specifically, but, you know, Nagato appears to be like 5 years older by the time that Obito is talking to him. And when Obito talks to Nagato, he appears to be like fresh right after the whole Rin dies thing. So this is like a 5-year gap, apparently. Okay, but, you know, in that war, Jiraiya, you know, if you want your mind broken, like, when you look at, like, Jiraiya in the Minato flashback, he looks like modern Jiraiya. You know, he's got the whole face paint, you know, down his face, he's got the jacket and all this. But the problem is that this Jiraiya looks like the seasoned Jiraiya, which is, you know, Jiraiya after his adventures and all of this, but Orochimaru is still in the village while Minato is Hokage. Orochimaru leaves after Minato is Hokage, because there was this whole competition for which one of them was going to be Hokage. And when we see the flashback of Jiraiya, like, fighting Orochimaru, like, when Orochimaru leaves the village, he doesn't look like modern Jiraiya. He looks like the young, like, war Jiraiya, you know? Like, wearing the same gear and all this. So it's like, what? Like, what? You know, and then again, the whole timeline of Obito manipulating the Yagura the Mizukage is very inconsistent. We don't know specifically how long it went, but it went roughly, you know, up to the beginning of the series. And again, how is his Genjutsu this good? like how is his Genjutsu this good? This guy's Genjutsu is freaking better than Itachi's. This dude is manipulating a perfect Jinchuriki for a period of years without any of his awareness. This is like the most insane feat of all time, which is why these, you know, Naruto versus battle artists can't explain it, because there's no explanation for it. It makes no sense. How is his Genjutsu this good? And if it is that good, why didn't he use it more? He never uses it in combat, never Genjutsus anyone in combat. Why? Your Genjutsu's this good, but you never use it? Makes no sense. Same thing with the whole Rinnegan nonsense, where Obito has a Rinnegan, but he never uses it. Bloody, you know, Naruto coming up with the, "Who are you? Rasengan! Hit you in the face." The dude could have just Shinra Tensei'd. The dude could have just absorbed, you know, dude could have just done whatever. I mean, they were in the dimension, whatevs. But, like, no. He just gets hit and all this. It's like, I'm sorry, I just, I mean, it bugs me to this day, dude. But, yeah, Obito being Tobi screws the timeline up. It simply does. It makes a lot of things which happen very strange. So it's problematic. It's not as problematic after Kishimoto has the next flashback, sorta, but it's also still incredibly problematic. Also because, speaking of that next flashback, because that's the next one coming up, Kakashi having his Mangekyo for like 20 years or whatever. Yeah, because that Kakashi's like 12, 13 years old. Kakashi by the series is like 30-ish. So, like, that's like 20 years. You're telling me Kakashi had a Mangekyo for like 30 years and like never used it? And like, when he was fighting Itachi, never used it in the original Naruto? I'm sorry, you're ridiculous, but that's more continuity problems again with this. So yeah, this whole Obito, you know, is Tobi is problematic because there were things which occurred, which would have been done. Again, like, it's just confusing. I'm just going to say it's just confusing. Like, this isn't necessarily. I don't have. This video isn't specifically just to talk about that, because I could make a whole video about that in theory, about all the problems that occur from Obito being Tobi. But I don't have all the lore on me right now, so I'm just going to. I just told you the base problems. But a lot of these things aren't explained in the manga, by the way. I mean, probably there's like data books which may be explained or something, but in the manga, we don't have as direct statements on this. Keep in mind, my statements are from the manga and all of that, like, in terms of like the timelines we have for these things, because these things aren't perfectly clear to us. You know, so keep that in mind. Okay. So, the Madara Obito flashback when Obito is saved by Madara. Now, it still doesn't really make sense that Obito was saved by Madara. There's no explanation for how it happened. I mean, Madara says, it's as if you slipped through, but he didn't have his Mangekyo yet, so it makes no sense. You know, there's no explanation for it, but it still makes no sense. It really doesn't matter, but it doesn't make sense. Also, there really, you know, at this point, really it just establishes what Madara's goal is, the reason for it, and the method for it. So I don't really have much to say about it, because at this time there wasn't much problems with it. Later, it would come to be problematic because, like, Madara, like, Black Zetsu would not actually be Madara's will. He's the will of Kaguya and all this ridiculous nonsense that came later. But at the time, this flashback is not really problematic itself. Obito and his relation to it is problematic, but other than the whole Kakashi detail, there really isn't specific problems I have with this flashback. It is what it is, and it explains what it needs to explain, characterizes what it needs to characterize. The Nagato relation, which we see later, is problematic. As I've already said, the timeline for what goes on with Nagato and what goes on with Jiraiya and all this, very confusing. But, and I'm not going to really say anything about it. I mean, you've seen it, you know, the whole scene where Obito goes in and, like, knees dude in the face and does, like, a Chuck Norris roundhouse kick and, like, pegs his, like, spear out of his shoulder and all of, you know, all of that. Like, it's a great, like, scene, very memorable, but, in terms of the combat aspect of it, but it is also the scene which establishes the Obito-Pito meme where he's all like, I'll create a world with you in it, baby. That's right, you 13-year-old girl. I will die for you. I will be there for you. That's right. 20 years from now, I'll still be crusading for that, baby. Yeah. Like, this insanity. And, you know, again, I'm not here to talk about Obito's characterization specifically, but yeah. Yeah, I don't really have anything more to say about this flashback. It's fine. Yeah, so... Okay. I believe the next one we are at is going to be the Hashirama Madara flashback, and this is really the one I want to talk about the most. Because this is the one everyone loved. Everyone loves this one, right? Everyone says, oh, this is a good flashback. Oh, you have to love the Madara Hashirama flashback. This is good. And while I definitely feel like Kishimoto's heart was in it, I feel like he was trying to give these ideas that he had and make it enjoyable and this and that, and we got to see the scale of it, we got to see the world of it. It doesn't change the fact that in terms of lore which we understood before, this flashback severely contradicts with it. Now, there was a flashback we got before. I don't remember if it was in the manga, but I do know it's in the anime. You get a flashback where you see Onoki being defeated by Madara with his Susanoo, and you see Madara with a leaf headband. I do believe that's the only time you see Madara with a leaf headband in that time. I do believe, like, when I was more autistic about Naruto, I actually did, like, the calculations and kind of counted that it didn't really, like, line up with what was later revealed, but I'm just not that autistic anymore, so I don't really care about that flashback. It's a very small flashback. I mean, Madara in the fight with the Kage does mention that Hashirama could heal instantly and he was the greatest shinobi ever and all of this, but he doesn't mention much about backstory very much, other than just saying Hashirama was epic. So, there's that. Now, I should mention to begin with this, because before this flashback even happens, Hashirama is called the God of Shinobi. Which is wrong. Hiruzen is the God of Shinobi. In the original Naruto, that's what he was called. He was known as the God of Shinobi. So this whole Hashirama is the God of Shinobi, no. It's a retcon, no. Simply put, it's a misapplied term. It's used now. I don't know if Kishimoto forgot it or what, but simply put, if you're a veteran, then, that's right. That's right, Wilbert. That's right. If you're a veteran, you'll know that, Hiruzen is the God of Shinobi, and this whole idea of Hashirama being the God of Shinobi is just stupid. Makes no sense. Well, it's not stupid, but it's a contradictive term, and that's Hiruzen's term. To begin that. Because I should, of course, mention that Kishimoto pretty much, went about hyping up and powering up Tobirama and Hashirama immensely from what we originally knew their powers to be in the original Naruto when we see them fighting as out of Tensei. We knew Hashirama had wood release, and we knew Tobirama had water release, but, I kind of was miffed about the fact that Tobirama barely uses water release in the fight. He basically just uses Flying Raijin, which for me made him, in terms of combat, just less interesting. Now, it was very interesting to see Tobirama and Minato combine their Flying Raijin for various attacks, and all of that. It was nice to see in the fight, but it made Tobirama less interesting overall, if you ask me. But, of course, Kishimoto probably was like, well, water release moves aren't really going to be enough to get the job done here, so I'm going to have to do a little bit more. So that's probably what we had to come up with to power up Tobirama, is just say, oh, he invented it. Now, I will say that there is a throwaway line in the Minato flashback where Minato does say Lord of Seconds Flying Raijin, so it is mentioned before there, so it's not completely out of left field, but, we didn't know that originally. Back when you're seeing their abilities in the original Naruto, you're not going to be saying to yourself, oh yeah, the second Hokage has Flying Raijin, oh yeah, because we just had never seen it. And I should mention that we do never see it in action until the fight with Izuna, where Tobirama pulls it out and uses it to defeat Izuna. And this is where things get problematic. So I don't really have a problem with Madara and Hashirama's childhood. None of that was known before, so it can't be contradicted from what was known before. Madara and Hashirama's childhood, they meet, they're children of war, they have conflict with each other, but they meet each other on equal terms, and they challenge each other, and this and that, and this and that. And we go from there, and then they eventually have to fight because they are Uchiha and Senju, and there's this beef between them for this reason, but there's still this kind of kinship with them. So then you get to this point where you have Hashirama and Madara fighting, and Tobirama and Izuna fighting, and I have a couple problems with this right off the bat. Number one, we never see Madara using Mangekyo powers during this specific fight. We see just him using Fire Style, Jutsu, Sharingan, and then Hashirama's using Wood Style. I have a severe problem with this, mainly because if Madara doesn't have Mangekyo, how is he possibly comparing with Hashirama? I'm sorry, but Hashirama by this point should have the Wood Golem, he should have his Wood Dragons and his, whatever it is, flowers that make poison, and his healing and all this. He should have these things, because the next fight that they appear in, which is implied to be relatively soon after this fight happens, Hashirama should have all these abilities by this point. So how is Madara with base Sharingan even comparing to Hashirama? It just doesn't make sense. Seriously. So he should have Mangekyo. You might say, well, what if he did? Well, why is it not shown? Because remember what Itachi said? Itachi gave us a whole thing about Madara's backstory before the Sasuke-Itachi fight. And this is what Itachi said. Itachi said Madara, and Izuna were the first to get the Mangekyo Sharingan. They killed their best friends, they got the Mangekyo Sharingan, and then they rose through the Uchiha clan and became the clan leaders. Madara eventually went blind from overusing his Mangekyo Sharingan, and therefore he had to take his brother's eyes, and then he got the Eternal Mangekyo Sharingan. Here's the problem with that. With what happens in the 4th Greninja War flashback, that is now impossible. Because number one, in this scene, we do not see Madara with his Mangekyo or Izuna with his Mangekyo, which is questionable as to why they were even able to fight on par with Hashirama and Tobirama given that. But that is less of the problem. The main problem is that Izuna dies in this fight from Tobirama. Tobirama kills Izuna. So how is it that Madara could have done the whole thing where he takes Izuna's eyes, like, as in, you know, like, Madara was blind, and then he took Izuna's eyes because he was blind, and then gets the Eternal Mangekyo Sharingan that way? Madara never went blind. Madara, like, as far as we can tell from... Unless you're going to tell, oh, well, Madara went blind right after the fight. No. Like, what? No. I mean, that would be really weird, because there was no implication that he was going to be blind. He was using his Sharingan during that moment, not his Mangekyo Sharingan, so why would he have gone blind after that? And then Izuna dies. So you're telling me that Madara, like, took Izuna's eyes from, like, Izuna's corpse or something? Like, that's what you're telling me? And again, that contradicts with what Itachi said. Directly contradicts. Like, it's literally impossible that they could have happened that way. Both contradict with each other. Now, I have a lot of these newbie fans who like to say... Newbie fans. By newbie fans, I should say, like, modern fans. Not the veteran boys. A lot of these people like to come in and say, oh, well, Itachi was lying to Sasuke. Itachi was lying to Sasuke. And again, this is damage control. You know, this is a long story. The Naruto, you know, story in terms of criticism of this stuff is a long-winded tale, but I'm going to say this very quickly. Why would Itachi lie? Why was Itachi lying? You say Itachi was lying, why? Number one, it was never said that he was within the story, but why? Why would Itachi tell Sasuke a fake story about Madara? A story that isn't real. And, you know, again, like, it's not like this is, like, secret history. Like, this would be popular Uchiha clan history. Sasuke presumably would not have known it because he was a kid when his clan was wiped out, and therefore he went through the regular Konoha schooling. But, you know, presumably if Sasuke became like a premier Uchiha, he probably would have known this history, right? It's pretty basic history. Oh, these were the clan leaders, and this is how they gained their powers, etc. I mean, the Mangekyo wasn't known by Sasuke when he was a kid, but it was known by his father and such. So, again, it's not like the history of Madara is some kind of, like, nebulous thing. So why would Itachi get the history of Madara directly and completely wrong with how it actually happened? Why? So that's the first point, simply put. And then the second point, again, is this whole Madara Mangekyo. Why? Because the next fight, which, you know, the next fight comes up, Madara fights Hashirama, and he pulls out his perfect Susanoo, and he has an eternal Mangekyo Sharingan. So this is after Izuna dies. Again, like, Madara took, like, eyes from Izuna's corpse. Like, that's the only way this happens in this scenario, which, no. I mean, that contradicts directly with what Itachi said. I think it's just, I don't like it. I don't like it because it contradicts. And there's no reason for it to contradict, because it didn't need to be this way. It didn't need to be this way. You know, you could have had the whole same thing where Madara takes Izuna's eyes and you didn't need to change it, but you did for some reason, and it makes no sense. Okay. So this fight happens, and then Madara forgives Hashirama, and Madara's all like, kill yourself or kill your brother. Hashirama decides to kill himself. Madara stops him from killing himself. Then the Uchiha and Senju form an alliance. Hashirama wants Madara to be the Hokage, but due to politics, basically, in the background, Madara is not popular even among the Uchiha, so he can't become the Hokage. Madara asks the Uchiha to leave Konoha. They do not. Madara reveals the nature of the Uchiha Stone Tablet, which he has read to him, pretty much declares like war on the Leaf Village, and becomes the first rogue ninja of the Leaf Village. Madara and Hashirama fight, and then at the end of it, of course, Hashirama kills Madara at that time, and then Madara survives by using Hashirama's flesh to heal himself, because Hashirama can keep healing himself with his flesh. That's his ability, and ability he has as part of his cells, etc. So, okay, that's the part, again, the part later I'm okay with, but it's this whole middle section with Izuna where it contradicts with the Madara flashback information we got during the Itachi fight, which just makes me so mad because there's just no reason for it to contradict. And moreover, Hashirama being as powerful as he was is a retcon, as is Madara. These characters were definitely implied to be powerful, but I mean, you could definitely say originally Hiruzen was implied to be stronger than them, and Minato was implied to be stronger than Hiruzen, definitely, within the original Naruto. Within that context, that's how these characters were implied to be in terms of strength, and this was retconned, but, So again, these flashbacks, they simply contradict with information we knew before. Oh, another flashback that I forgot to mention was the flashback with during the Kabuto fight. You had the Izanami flashback. This also makes no sense. Very quick point on this one. It was said during the fight with Danzo that to do Izanagi, you needed to have Senju and Uchiha DNA, or Hashirama cells and the Sharingan, basically. Yet in the Kabuto fight, we get this flashback where we have just a bunch of random Uchiha, like with Mangekyo or whatever, and they're all just like spamming Izanagi. They're just all spamming it, and it's like, what? Like, how? Like, you needed Hashirama cells to do Izanagi. How are you just like spamming it over and over again? It makes no sense. So, no, that one is pretty basic to refute. It doesn't make sense with what was said before in the series. So, that one's pretty easy. Okay, we're almost done. Next one is when Madara gives his mural, shows that mural of chakra and talks about how the Shinju is the origin of chakra, etc., etc. I didn't really have a problem with that point because we already were described what the Ten Tails is, so saying the Ten Tails was originally a tree, I mean, that's fine with me, whatever, don't care. Then, not too much lore after this point, mostly fighting. We get the whole seeing Obito as the Sage Six Paths and all this. We do get the whole reveal of Rin, how Rin was secretly like the Three Tails Jinchuriki and all of this. Which I guess, it makes it less worse that Rin was like the Three Tails Jinchuriki, because that would have meant Obito was manipulating Yagra after, which wasn't clear before then, but meh, like whatever, like I don't care. I don't care about Rin. I don't care really about Obito that much. I mean, I don't like Obito, but whatever. So then we get the whole flashback where the Sage of Six Paths reveals that Naruto and Sasuke are the reincarnations of Indra and Ashura, which is very problematic for all kinds of reasons. But I'm not talking about that. I'm not talking about the plot aspect of it. It just simply is that, well, why not? I will talk about the plot aspect of it. Naruto is predestined to basically fulfill these prophecies of the Toad Sage Gamamaru, which were revealed during the time of the Sage of Six Paths and revealed to Jiraiya later, this whole child prophecy situation. Now this was revealed during the Pain arc and after post-seeding it, and all the way up to now where we get this prophecy, and then we get Naruto as being the reincarnation of the Sage's son, in essence, a semi-Jesus figure. Let's be frank about this. This is what it is. Naruto is Kid Jesus. I mean, let's be frank about it. That is what this is. I mean, seriously. Yeah, and in the manga, we really don't get much about it. It's very short. Pretty much we just get, oh, well, Ashura was weak, but then he trained and developed his body abilities, and then Indra, was arrogant, and they both fought each other, and then afterwards their chakra was scattered and reincarnated throughout the ages, and love must win out over hate, and I gave Ashura the superior power last time, but this time I'm going to be fair to both, and blah blah blah. Again, I personally don't think the Sage Six Paths ever should have been characterized. I think that one moment where we see like the Kyuubi when it's like a very young, and then you see like the back shot of the Sage of Six Path, and it's like the Kyuubi like cries or whatever. I thought that was the only characterization for the Sage of Six Paths we ever needed. That was fine. That was pretty good. That was pretty nice. That was good. I mean, if I weren't so bloody, you know, just out of Naruto by that point and just kind of sick of all the nonsense that had been going on, I probably would have like been really sad at that scene and like maybe cried or something, because I was like, ooh, like it was a really sentimental scene. And that was all we ever needed from the Sage of Six Paths. Because once he came into the series, he just sucked. Honestly, I didn't like him at all. He was an idiot. Simply put, for the god of the verse, a very immature figure. And he mistakes twice. I mean, he makes the mistake over again. Naruto and Sasuke fight anyway. He's a moron. He's a clown. I don't like him. But I'm not here to talk about that necessarily. Just this lore. And again, this lore delegitimizes Naruto and Sasuke's entire character, of which significantly were already delegitimized to a great extent. But yeah, this element pretty much just nails that in the coffin, and it weakens Madara and Hashirama's character. It makes said reincarnates basically less unique in terms of character. It simply does. Makes them less unique. Makes their own accomplishments, feelings, and abilities, less unique and genuine. It worsens the plot. It worsens the plot. And considering Naruto is a series which has emphasized fighting against destiny, traditionally, especially the Naruto vs. Neji fight is a whole thematic commentary on it. It's simply disappointing. It's very disappointing if you enjoyed that theme of Naruto, which Naruto always likes to have thematic commentary in its battles via talk no jutsu, as people call it. It's a very disappointing thing which happened. So the last thing to reveal is Kaguya, which is also revealed in this flashback. Kaguya is the origin of chakra, so here's the peg tree in terms of origin. Kaguya is some kind of alien creature who came to the world. Kaguya ate the fruit of the Shinju tree. The Shinju tree is the origin of chakra itself. Kaguya then gained all the chakra. Kaguya's sons, Hagoromo and Hamura, fought against Kaguya and the Ten Tails, which is basically the Shinju come to life. Hagoromo became the Sage Six Paths and became the first Jinchuriki of the Ten Tails, where he created the Nine Biju by splitting the Ten Tails within his body, and the remaining husk of the Ten Tails, which was the Gedomazo, he then implanted on the moon via Chibaku Tensei. So this is pretty much the whole lore of chakra here, and Madara wants to eliminate chakra. He believes chakra has led to nothing but war and wants to create the infinite Tsukiyomi to pretty much put everyone into a trance, matrix, illusion world so they can live out their dreams and peace and all of this. And I'm not here to comment on those themes, but this was Madara's goal in this sense. And this is the history of all of that. So with Kaguya comes into the plot, and there's really nothing to say about Kaguya because she isn't characterized very much. So there really is only like one little detail left to add, which is Kaguya herself doesn't really add anything to the plot in terms of anything she commentates, because she pretty much never talks and pretty much never emotes. But there is Black Zetsu, which is the fact that Black Zetsu orchestrated all of shinobi history. According to his own statement, Black Zetsu is the one who manipulated Indra. Black Zetsu is the one who manipulated Madara. Oh, and if you thought Black Zetsu was Madara's will incarnate, no, it was actually Kaguya's will incarnate, and this whole plan was to bring back Kaguya, and this and that, and this and that, and it's the last nail in the coffin in terms of just destroying any respectable continuity the Naruto series had at this point. Of course, after Kakashi went on his ridiculous Perfect Susanoo, Obito is transporting his soul into Kakashi, ridiculous nonsense. This is the last nail in the coffin for this. And yes, this is the last element as to why the flashbacks and the lore introduced in the Fourth Ninja War is incredibly problematic and really does not improve Naruto's lore at all, because this lore, like, here's the thing. Let's ask concretely. How much of this lore improved the continuity of Naruto the series? Of this lore that was introduced. And of which was introduced, there was only one I can really say, which was the Minato flashback. That improved the overall continuity of the Naruto franchise. The rest of this? Well, I think you got the picture. The Sage's sons as reincarnates delegitimized what was left to delegitimize of Naruto and Sasuke's character. A very sad case to see. Bloody, you have the Sage Six Paths himself demystifying that concept, and from that, you have the Ten Tails itself, which, in my opinion, was disappointing completely as an entity. It comes up completely disappointing, it doesn't speak, uninteresting, don't even get to see its final form. Not even filler do we get to see its final form. And at the end of the day, we have Kaguya, whose origins are unknown, whose goals are not understood, and we have Zetsu, who literally in the entire nature of Naruto's history has delegitimized it completely by making it literally all his writ, all his writing, all his orchestration. At that point, it is literally a complete soap opera joke. It is a farce. It is nonsensical. These backstories which were introduced did not improve the continuity of Naruto. Moreover, the Madara Hashirama flashback. Yes, you did get a new perspective into the origin of Konoha and the villages, and it was good to see. It was good to see that. It was good to feel that, but overall, it screwed up the continuity more so as well because it was inconsistent with information prior, which it didn't need to be, I should add. Those inconsistencies which existed within that flashback did not need to exist. It could have been written in a way easily where it could have ended up differently. You could have had Madara and Hashirama, you could have had, let's say, Izanami be assassinated or something by Tobirama, if you wanted Madara to have some kind of beef against Tobirama. But Madara already has enough beef to have against Tobirama anyway, because Tobirama would have taken the Hokage position from him and would have resented the Uchiha. So, yeah, he killed Izuna, but he didn't need to kill Izuna. Like, there was no reason for that to be there. You could have just had the way it go originally in the plot. It could have just gone the original way it did, and it would have been fine, but no, you didn't do that. And you did that and you didn't need to, and it bugs the heck out of me. So, you know, that's it. So, that is why the flashbacks of the Fourth Ninja War also suck, and they don't help Naruto, they make Naruto worse. Even if they were better than the Fourth Ninja War itself, I mean, that's like, what are you saying? I like rolling around in, it's literally saying I like rolling around in manure versus I like rolling around in mud. I mean, you know, the mud is better, you know, I'll take the mud, but, like, I don't want to roll around in mud, I want to roll around in ice cream or something. You know, I don't want to roll around in mud, and I definitely don't want to roll around in manure, so if you give me the option of mud, I'll take it, but, like, can you give me water? Can you give me, you know, whatever? Yeah, chocolate, something good, not something bad. And both are bad, okay? So that's the point, okay? That's what I'm going to say. So I'm Spaghetti King. I thank you for watching if you watched all of this, because of course it was insane and autistic and ridiculous, because keep in mind, my Naruto power level isn't even that high anymore, and I just went in on this. But I do appreciate anyone who did tune in this one. So that's how I go when I make any of these anime rants. I really shouldn't make these anime rants because they just go on way too long, or they just go and go and go and go. But nonetheless, thank you very much for watching. I'm Spaghetti King. I love you all, and farewell.